I always say that I always say that these 8 hours of LEKGOTLA look very long when you still announce it, but once you are in it, it flies so quick, especially when the topic is so nice. The first segment was really very good, and I was really asking myself a lot of questions and wondering why am I not always conscious of the fact that I'm communicating or I'm doing PR when I'm sending messages, either as an email or tweet or any sort of thing. I've really been conscientized. I don't know about you, but what we should do now, let's just check out of that previous session. Let's reflect. Uh, let's share with each other what was confirmed by that segment and Boniwe's presentation, plus our dialogue or conversations after her presentation. Let's share our light bulb moments. We call it aha moments. And then, of course, share the new insights that we've picked up from the first segment. And if there's any take home, what will it be? And also, if there are new practices that you want to introduce to your day-to-day professional engagement with stakeholders, let's share with them.
I think for me, what was confirmed was the importance of public relations, particularly corporate communication, all the things that she talked about, adaptability and all. Its importance, particularly now, in the environment where we are, so we call it the VUCA world, the VUCA world, where everything is volatile. It's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous, and therefore being on top of your game, understanding communications, being able to adapt, having plan Bs and all those things become more important now. So what was confirmed, certainly for me, was the importance of public relations. And I think probably it might be a time to reimagine the name, because the name public relations, as I said earlier, carries some baggage that kind of like negative. And yet this is a very important part of business. And in fact, now with most business, because of the electronic platforms that we use, you really can work from anywhere, and you can portray the image that you want and through public relations. So that's one. So the aha for me was the now, alongside the importance of public relations, the importance of yourself as a brand, your business as a brand. So being a brand now is particularly key. So obviously, as a business, you need to protect your brand, you need to enhance it, etc. But you are a brand. The last conversation that we were having about disclaimers and all, they talk to you being a brand, and what the obligations that go with that are understanding that you can't do as you please. Remember the aspect of, oh, I'll do anything that I want. You can't do as you please. You must know what your brand is, what it stands for, where you are going, and therefore align everything around that, because you're a brand. And of course, the stronger, the better the brand, the more now you are able to sell whatever product that you sell. And so the insights will be around that as well. My take home is just to reinforce that, to say each one of us going home, to actually sit back and say, I'm a brand. What am I still? What do I want people to see me as? What do they see me now as? And what are the things that I should do to get to the perception I want people to have? You influence this. In the past, we never used to think things like Hollywood, etc., were important. But now we understand that our perception of the US comes via Hollywood. And we think it's this fancy place with all these rich people and all that. And yet the reality is very different. But because of media and the communication, anyone outside of the US, anyone out of UK, they have an impression of who that is by virtue of brands that have been put out there for us. So that's an important one. And of course, new behaviors is to think of yourself as a brand and to act accordingly. And there's no let up. You are a brand, my friend, and you have to follow certain things to become that brand, live that brand. And once you make it a habit, then it's not effort. Initially, it's an effort when you want to do it consciously because you're still thinking. I think Sam writes about conscious competence and all that in LEKGOTLA. If you read it as it starts, but you must get to a point where you don't even think about it. All those things are you, and that's the position you want to end up. That's my take.
Great. Thank you, George. Wow.
Very impactful. Good takeaways. I was reflecting on our speaker from earlier, Bonnie Way, and how she talked about the importance of her doing public relations, but how she found herself using it frequently in human resources. That she also was able to help us identify how important it is to understand who key stakeholders are with respect to communication, and that those people will typically carry a strategic message. They'll be the face of a brand that that you want to make sure that you're identifying someone who's capable of being able to communicate very broadly. She spoke about communication not just being a good communicator is not just necessarily extroverted. I thought that was a really good point, specifically because some of the greatest communicators may be introverts. That's just a difference of how they prefer to take in information or their communication energy. However, you don't necessarily, sometimes the perception is that one is extroverted and therefore they're a good communicator. So I thought that was good to include the different styles of communication so that people know that it doesn't, that doesn't necessarily make the difference, and you can develop strongly some of the skills that go into public relations and communications. She also spoke about a couple of key characteristics that one should possess in this profession, in public relations and communications. She spoke about adaptability, being able to adapt a message when necessary, as quickly as it may need to be adapted. She spoke about resilience as well. And so that was really good, especially with respect to crisis management. And so there was a lot of conversation about when you're at the face of the brand and something happens, you need to be able to react quickly, and you also need to be able to react in a manner that's very resilient. Pick up, get the message out, do what it is that you need to do as an organization, get your key stakeholders together to make sure that you do what it is that's necessary and be able to move forward. So she gave a lot of conversation about that, and also about a plan B. So those were some of my takeaways, just being able to have a plan B just in case you need one, but really go in with the target being plan A as much as possible. So I thought she gave some really good tips on how to communicate strongly.
Wow. Great stuff. Thank you, Janae.
Well, I thought Brother Michael will come, but I just came a bit later when she actually was talking about Plan B and the importance, as Janae and George has alluded to that, the importance of ensuring that you have the plan B. For me, I think maybe there might be plan C. Okay, so when all the plans, and I know that the people who are in this platform, the planning part, is the main key part that as of my side, I actually want to ensure that I focus on, because it determines how the success is going to be. So that's what, for me, I take on. And also what came out after the engagement after is the importance of branding, reputation, and also ensuring that as Brother Josh has said, that you are just not an individual, but you are a brand. But getting to understand that in the context of your roles and different functions is also very key, because one role and function can affect the other. So how do you, as an individual, you get capacitated and empowered? Because we need capacitation, and sometimes we actually, on the areas of our weaknesses, we don't focus on those areas. We think that we are capable. We think that we are capable when we actually need assistance. So for me, is to identifying those areas that I am not competent on, and allowing external support to help me in order to get that balance. Because I think as leaders, we always think that because you are good at one thing, you are actually good into the rest of the other things. No, which is not actually the case. So that's why actually mentoring and coaching is very important for us to, but we have to identify the areas where we need assistance, because we need, for example, in my case, I know that from now, what I would have to do is to ensure that as a brand, in the areas where I have gaps, I actually identify people from external to help me. So for my key point, or the action, is to improve in those areas, because we deal with stakeholders, we deal with a whole lot of things that need to enhance the outcomes that you want for organizations. But if I cannot acknowledge the weakness, is to actually say, you know what, I'm weak in this area, but I know that there is my colleague or somebody else that I can go and help in, and then it benefits the whole organization. So that's the key for my side. The aha moment, of course, is that I am a brand. That in itself is an aha moment. I must not. I'm a brand. Whether I'm a soccer player, I'm a pastor, I'm whatever I am. But whether I go to a stadium or I'm in the church, wherever I am, I represent brands. So and one thing that I think I don't know whether it was Brother George, he talks about values, the importance of understanding what that organization I represent stand for, and ensuring that whatever I do outside, I align into those values. I respect those values, and I don't infringe them, but I leave, they become part of who I am. So that's the key takeout for me. Thank you, brothers. Thank you, brother.
All right, thanks, brother Sydney. Regarding the confirmation, what was confirmed on my side is the role PR play in our daily lives. It can either be, I hear a lot of you guys were mentioning that there's no such as work capacity and personal capacity. They're all integrated into one thing. Therefore, whatever you do, it can either be at work or on your personal space, will affect the other. So that's what really confirmed out of me. And aha moment, of course, it's you are a brand. That one really said with me that you are a brand in everything that you do. Of course, as I've just highlighted about the role of PR, meaning that in whatever that I do, it can either be during home time where there's no work. I should also record that what I'm doing now involves comments. It can either be negatively or positively. Therefore, I need to take cautious of that. And regarding take home, I will have what Boniwe, I think, mentioned something about always having a plan B. it really does work to have a plan B. It really happened also with us here at LEKGOTLA, whereby we had a problem with our Zoom and we had to integrate into another platform quicker in order to align and have share the meeting of the day and wrap up the day. And new behavior, of course, it will be effective communication on my side. I tend to just keep things on my side and I assume that people will read in between that there is something with Michael. So I will try to share it out. I'm a person who loves sharing, keeping things to myself. So I'll try to communicate effectively and share it to the public. I think that's it.
Wow. That's almost like doing a pledge with ourselves, you know.
Wow.
What are we going to do different to improve ourselves? I think that's quite helpful. And for me, what was confirmed is that actually communication is an art that all of us must master. I don't think we have a choice. Deciding not to be conscious when you communicate is just a convenience that you way of trying to make it convenient for yourself. But I think it's not something that we can avoid. I think we must all acknowledge that sometimes we miss sending right messages because we don't master the art. And what complicates it is even the platforms that are there available, many of them. You know, there are a number of times where I communicate something and I sometimes don't understand why I decided to use a particular medium, but I've used it anyway. So that's for me the confirmation. Aha moment, I guess I would like to say that all of us, PR applies to all fields of life. That's my aha moment. Not that I didn't know, but I think it's just sort of like become more reinforced, and therefore it's really an aha moment for me. The same goes with the adaptability. I think I always know that we all have to be resilient, but when it comes to communication or PR, especially if you are a PR professional, I think it could be very disastrous if something goes wrong and then you don't have a plan B and you are not able to adapt and then the event ends up being cancelled. I think that could be very destructive to yourself. Yeah, my take home is again the plan B and the adaptability. Those are the 2 points that I also take home. My new behavior is, I think one has to be, and I would like to be fully present at all times when I actually communicate. I want to be always aware of, it is not just a message being sent. I'm sending the message to a particular stakeholder with the intention to initiate a particular action or particular move, and I must listen attentively when I get something back. That will be my new behavior.
Oh, good. That's good.
They say for every action there is a reaction.
Yes.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So if I've sent a message, I must wait for a reaction and I must unpack that reaction and analyze this whether I get this reaction because of the way I communicated, or has there been any pollution in between that made the reaction to be what it is.
Wow.
Can I chip in?
Oh yeah, you've been struggling to come back.
Yeah, I have a problem with connection this side, man.
All right. Yeah, we are listening.
Yeah, I even missed the public relation. Where are we now? Communication network.
We are because you missed a lot of that presentation. It might be a little bit difficult for you to give a reflection. We are checking out of that previous session, to say what was confirmed, what is an aha moment, new insights, take home, and new behaviors. I don't know whether
I think I can look at it from my perspective.
Yes.
Can I proceed and recap the public relation from my perspective?
Yeah, as addressing those 5 points. I don't know how you're going to do it, but maybe let's allow you to
Oh,
go
maybe
ahead.
I thought I'll take it like public relation is a strategic communication process that builds a mutual benefit between organization and the public. Public relation can also be defined as the practice of managing good communication between organization and its people. The question is, public relation, why is it important? It is important because it creates a favorable image, press release in writing and distribution, 3 media training. In other words, if one is on TV, 4 social media management, 5 article writing and blogging, 6 it promotes email marketing to reach people. Then 7, it promotes events. If one is an expert on events, one can use also public relation. Then 8, it promotes advertising. As we know, advertising, it triggers the consumer, it reminds the consumer about the products. And 9, vendor relationship. And 10, market research. And 11, in-house and agency. 12, media relations. And last if not least, it promotes project management. That's from my side. I'm sorry to join the ship now, but
No, that's fine. Thanks for your input. We're going to go deeper into those with the next segment. This
then also
was just a way.
communication network.
Come again.
Communication network refers to how information flows within the organization. Information within an organization generally flows through a system rather than being a free flow. A communication network are regular patterns of
Mr. Munakotla, do you mind if you hold on to those, because we are going into a bit more specifics in the next segment, and I think those inputs are going to be valuable to the next segment. We have had the input now. We want to go now into just specifics of community, because we did say that it's an art, it's a science. So we want to sort of like enlighten ourselves without diving too deep into what are the things that we need to look at to. And if you don't mind, we want to move there now, Mr. Munakotla. There are just few points, and I'm going to ask ourselves just to write down these points, and then we will handle them one after another. And I think that's where you will come in, Joe, if you don't mind, right?
Can you give it to me, Mr. Tsima?
Yeah, I'm just saying to everybody, we're going to go into those details. Don't offload everything now. We want that when we are going to go into specific right now. We are all going to be active now, and thanks for having started that. I'm glad you have quite a lot to share, but I want to package it according to the subsections of our master class. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, thanks so much, sir.
All right. So I want us to spend some moments on these topics. Creating your communication strategy. Now, it doesn't matter for what purpose, and I'm sure we are going to have various inputs all ourselves. Basically, the starting point is you need to be thinking about it, and therefore it must start with your strategy of communication for whatever purpose you are using the communication, either for you as a person or for your business or for your organization. If you were to create a communication strategy, what will you look at? And I'm glad there are some of us here who have probably worked with this, and it's good to just bring those things up, because we take it for granted that everybody knows this. Now, the purpose of us communicating here is not to make assumptions, it's to really state things. So somebody who's hired as want to study communication must know that it's not just talking. There's going to be an expectation that you know how to put together a communication strategy. Otherwise, they won't hire you. Yeah. So we're going to spend time on that. The second point is we want to talk about the messaging. the messaging, knowing your message. Yeah, because we just communicate, but what type of messages and how will you really know the message? Take a back seat and say, what is the message? How do I package it? And I think Bonnie touched on that as well, right? And then the third point is, the next point is, how do we identify the audience? Yeah, identifying the audience. And then the next point is the culture, understanding the culture within which communication is taking place. What do we mean by that? What are we talking about when we say, look at the culture, yeah, of communication? Now, something very interesting, which is the next point, which I think many of us are overwhelmed by, the multiplicity of channels available to us. So what sort of channels do you think will carry your strategy, will be used to communicate, to apply your strategy? And I think, include our technology platforms there. And then how will you, which platform will you use for what type of communication? And then there's also understanding where you are as a person and an organization. If you are a multinational organization, will it be the same as you are a local organization or a regional organization or an NGO, a public sector or a private sector? Because we don't want to overkill, but we also don't want to underserve our circumstances. And then, of course, in your strategy, identifying where you want to go with this, whatever it is that you're communicating, and how will you go about planning to get there where you are going. I think that is the first segment I would like us to just open a dialogue around those things, and those who have experience, take us through those pointers, and let's have a conversation. Bonnie is going to be joining us from 1 o'clock, so I look forward to her continued contribution as well. Let's open the floor. There's no order of talk. Anyone can just come up and address those issues, because, yeah.
Well, I wanted to start off with a very kind of obvious thing, and that is what we mean by the word strategy, because that's simple. So what I really did was to just go in and say, what is a strategy? It's defined as a plan of action,
yes,
designed to achieve a long-term or overall aim. So it's a plan of action designed to achieve a long-term or overall aim. So that's your strategy. So if you're thinking of achieving something tomorrow, that tends to be more tactics as opposed to a strategy. Okay, I thought that's a good starting point. Then we can go.
So if my boss says to me, Sam, you're a communication chief, can you come up with a communication strategy? What are they asking from me?
They say, give us a long-term plan to achieve whatever it is that we want. So if you're a sports person, you want to enhance the image or whatever of your organization, then it's a strategy to achieve that. But what it means, the strategy, is that you must know your end game.
Okay.
You must know where you want to go. That's the start. So you start with the end in mind. This is what we want to achieve, folks. What do we do to achieve that? Then you play with the pieces. But if you don't know where you're going, it's rather hard to get the strategy going.
Does that mean that end goal must be defined first then? Because now here's an exco saying, come up with a communication strategy. And you are saying, guys, we must first start with the end in mind. So are you suggesting that therefore there must be agreement of the end in mind as a first thing, or what?
Yes, there must be an overall aim. what are we aiming at?
Through the communication strategy.
Yes. So,
but is the communication strategy, if I'm not in a big communication company, but I'm in a motor manufacturing company, but I need a communication strategy, what is that about? What is it? What is it to do? What?
Whatever you then choose to do. So for instance, let's say your overall aim is to improve your relationship with government. Let's say that's your overall aim. You then sit down and say, how do we improve our relationship with the government? How best do we do it? Then you go into the whole thing, which ministry is important to us, who are the players there, what, but your aim is to improve your relationship with government. So you define that as you start. And then you have a strategy to follow to achieve that. Because that's
Michael?
important.
Yes, George, thanks very much. Michael, you wanted to come in there.
Yes, I think you were asking about if a company, I think it's a motor or something company that wants you to come with a strategy of communication. It can work. Remember that in terms of strategy, it can either be through marketing or through the internal affairs of the organization. How do we communicate internally? Remember, there are companies that have almost around more than 80 people, right? But then there are people who doesn't know what will happen the following month within the very same organization. It shows that there is a lacking of communication. Therefore, there could be another way of sharing that message. Can we leave we send a thoroughly email or we create a group among the sectors that this is responsible for sharing communication to certain department. This one is responsible for sharing certain communication to this department. Therefore, that way effective communication should be a way forward and everything should be well.
I like what George has said, that you start with the end in mind. So that is why it makes me get my feet stuck there, because the CEO says to me, come with a communication strategy. Now, my question to the CEO is to achieve what? And George says, you start with the end in mind. Now, I might be the head of communications department. I'm fascinated about communication. I just want to achieve communication. My question is, we have a communications department because we have a business. Now, my question is this communication the end on its own, or is it meant to achieve that? So the communication itself might be a problem, but it might be that we are failing to achieve certain things because communication is not functioning. Yeah, George?
That is the point, sir. Because so let's go to the motor company. Let's say it's a Hyundai or whatever it is, and Hyundai have certain objectives in the market. They want to achieve these sales. The marketing wants to achieve that. Alongside with all those things, the sales, the production levels, there is a communication plan that supports those objectives. So the objective might be our target is we want to sell so many vehicles in the year, and these are the channels that we're going to be using, and all that. So how do you How do you talk to your retailers? These are the guys who are going to sell your cars, right? How are you going to talk to the guys who from whom you buy parts? How are you going to? What's your social responsibility around that so that you look like a good man and all that? So in that, so your strategy is you have already an end in mind. This is our end. Then your role is to say, how do we play around with this to ensure that we achieve this objective, which the CEO has said. So the CEO walks in and says, Sam, this is what I want to achieve. Now you go out and develop a communication plan around it. But you don't walk into the CEO's office and say, CEO, I have a communication plan. And he says to achieve what? It starts with him saying to you, this is where we are going, and this is what I want to achieve. Now you help me get there by doing certain things around.
So let's make a practical example. We have a campaign at this motor company, and we have a brand new SUV coming, and I want the market to know I'm the CEO now. I want the market to be ready for this launch. The day we launch this SVU, there must be a stream of clients wanting to buy. So that could be the purpose of that communication. Will it be a strategy or will it be a plan?
Remember how we defined a strategy? It is a plan to achieve an overall aim, the long-term aim.
Okay, thank you for that.
We are launching, so we are in March, we are in April now. So folks, in end of March next year, we are bringing in online this brand new SUV. Production are working on it. The technical guys are working on it. But we want to whet the appetite of these people. So you've got a year to plan.
Okay.
So now your communication plan is: do we go to the market today and say in 12 months we'll have an SUV, or do we do certain things so that by December, when we say, hey, in a few months this is coming, we would have done X, Y. So your plan now is to support the company's objective. He doesn't know what tools to use. Are we on WhatsApp? Are we Facebook? That's you to do it for him. But he wants to ensure that the day that first truck rolls out of his outlet, there's a queue of people wanting to buy. That's what he wants. How you do it, well, my friend, is you.
So we tick off the chapter 1 of that strategy is the end in mind. What next then, George? Or colleagues in general?
Yeah.
Sydney, you are muted.
Yeah, sorry, Prasad. Maybe just to say on the strategy as well, is that I think we define strategies in many other areas, and we know without maybe having to go into deeper, in a simple way for a layman in the street on what he can actually do, because we are always strategic in terms of what we want to do. And I want to go to the point that Brother George has said, is that it's important that you must have an end goal in mind, because you cannot just start without having that clarity in that end goal. And I must just say also, in terms of that outcome, they have to be smart in a smart sense, that it is specific, measurable, realistic, and also timed. It has to be measurable. It's something that, even though there are things that you cannot measure, but you set mechanism of getting to say from the start, this is where I started. As I start moving, I've progressed this much, and you can be able to measure it. Because otherwise, if you don't put measurements, it becomes very difficult to track. So that's one part. And the other part that I wanted to say, in terms of maybe sort of components that are also part of the strategy, is that one, you need to ensure that, as my brother has said, there is a plan that is defined. Who is going to do what by when? And that plan must be very specific. Who is going to do what by when? And then, and secondly, because we talk about a product or a service, we have to actually know what product and what service are we giving to the market, and who that market is. So we need to establish a new way on how we can reach to our market. That's the second part around. I'm still just talking around the strategy. And the third part that I believe that is also important is to how in that strategy you build. It must talk to how do you identify those stakeholders, and how do you build relationships, which actually links to the topic that we spoke about PR, public relations, because it is mainly about identifying, building, and sustaining those relationships. So, but you have to know who they are. And that also needs some form of work as a person who wants to activate the outcome, to say, who are the people that I'm speaking to, which platforms they're in, and all of that. And the third part, and the fourth part around the strategy is about how do you then look at what you have in terms of the platforms, the channels that you have, because there has to be a message that goes through. And I like what PRCN has said. Sometimes what we do, we select the platforms without identifying them first, and look at how it will assist us in terms of the outcome that we achieve. So sometimes there's disconnect we come with a means. I'll make a practical example, maybe just to illustrate the point that I want to say, is that, I'll just narrate one of the stories that I heard other people were doing. There were a team of people wanting to go into a destination. So the outcome was that we want to make a trip and we want to arrive in that destination. So what they did is that, because they're a group of people and people are busy they have got various skills and so on, then they dedicated that assignment to one person to do it, to book for flights, to ensure that the integrities in the plan. So at the end of the day, everything was set up, but there is one thing that was a mistake in the plan. They did not check the calendar, the calendar, which is very important in the plan to actually do that. So what they did, so this is how it was going to happen. They were going to be taken from where they stay, dropped into the airport. From the airport, they get into that destination, and from that destination, then they had to take a cruise. Now, and then leave to that destination. That means the project is complete. They arrived at the place. But what they did not think about as a team was that it was the timing part. So they dedicated one task to one person, believing because the person in life loves to do that, or just book flights for us and so on. When they were landing at the airport, somebody, when he checked the schedule, he realized that, hey, did you see the schedule? What did they say? But they said, but the cruise is leaving in 10 minutes and we're not going to make it. No one picked it up. They were already in the destination, but they were not going to make it. Why? Because they failed to meet the time. So that outcome was crushed. So I think also what is important in the strategy is which is what I was saying, the engagement of the different people and getting their input in shaping what needs to be done, so that they become fully involved. So those are the things that I can say are the critical. How do we choose the platform? You don't choose the platform before you see how it is going to help the outcome. So when you pick the platform, you already know what outcome is going to achieve. So, and that needs also some form of deliberation as we engage in the planning. I will stop there from here.
Thank you, Brother Sydney. Any other inputs or reflections on what Sydney has just said? Yeah.
I'm thinking something that comes to mind. I know we're talking about building a strategy and being able to operate towards your communication strategy for your organization. This comes up, I think, pretty often. What happens when you're moving towards an outcome, a desired outcome, as George talked about, a destination that you like to arrive to? What happens when the team gets stuck on perfection? You need to go out with a message. You need to be able to get the message out, but you're kind of stuck on, that things are going out into an audience where things are going to be consumed. So what happens when you're formulating a strategy, you want to execute to your strategy, but then your message gets stuck in, making sure that everyone hears it the way you intend to? How do you get out of that? Hire
Okay,
PR specialist.
I can never go. I'm really talking from my experience. I think it's perfect clarity of your goal. What exactly do you want to achieve? Because once you know exactly what it is you achieve, the actual message will follow that. Knowing fully well that in the process, you can never get anything 100%, and that's the nature of life. You have a goal. You want to target certain messages to achieve that goal, and what you can do is the best effort that you can. So if you have a team of 4 people, who are deliberating on the messages. So I told Sam that at some stage I was I was leading a team that was rebranding an organization. And so we created messages. And so Janae is the one who leads that about creating the message. She has 3 people that she works with, or she's got an agency she works with, where she has the final say. Now, it might be at the end of it, after all is said and done, 2 years later, it turns out the her message wasn't as great as the one that was offered by the next guy. That doesn't matter. At the time, Janae had to make a call, and she made a call to say, this is the message that we're going to run with. And you go. So you will never have a guarantee that says this message is the one that will turn the world over. No. You make a call based on what you have and say, we're going now. And go. And so I think the answer to that is that I don't think you will ever have the perfect message. You will have a message that you know should achieve your goal. And it might turn out to be the perfect, or it might turn out to be less than perfect. But you can never sit down and say we have it now, because only time gives you an answer to that.
And the only time you know that we got the wrong message is when now the affected people, internal and external, start jumping and say, but where is this coming from?
What is this?
What is this? I've had the organization winning the best company to work for prize, and the staff members of that company will say, but when was this survey done?
I'm confused.
Because I've never been asked to make inputs. Now, and we are sitting at the event where the CEO is about to receive this award of being the best company to work for. And everybody says that all these companies are participating in this best company to work for, have participated in a survey where all the employees were asked to make input. So we're getting input from the company. Meanwhile, what the company did, they selected a few employees to complete the form. And now you're getting a message of you are a winner, but actually it's been contested. So I think that takes us to the next point of this strategy, saying knowing the message. What does knowing the message mean? How do we go around making sure that you know the message? Because when the message comes out, it's rejected. That means probably you didn't think seriously about it. Welcome back, Bonnie. We are holding a master class, and your inputs are also coming through. We don't want to talk about at the high level. We want to talk about if you are a PR person, you are charged with the responsibility of putting together a plan or a strategy. And some of the components we want to talk about is George mentioned that the starting point is the end in mind. And if you are asked by the EXCO or the CEO to come up with a strategy, the first question you need to ask the CEO is, what do we want to achieve? So we've dealt with that. We agree that there must be agreement on the end state. But now, Brother Sidney spoke about the platform that we are going to use are very important. And now we are saying that there's one component of the strategy that we need to talk about is you need to know the message. Did you say before you choose the platform, Brother Sidney, or did you say you choose the platform first before you formulate the message? I can't remember. What did you say, Brother Sidney?
No, I was just saying the circumstances, they actually differ. Sometimes you find the platforms that are there, then you have to work out on how they can, achieve the results. But in the case where you're starting from a clean slate, before you even choose the platform, you have to, have a reason why you choose the platform and how it takes you to the path of achieving the outcome. For example, I'll make it a practical example. When for example, I want to go to Durban, the reason for me going to Durban, maybe I want to explore the environment. So I may actually take the flight, but I cannot achieve the outcome because I can arrive faster, but missing it. But what I'm saying is that you can take a train, even it is slowly, but it will allow you to actually see the things that you've said from the beginning that you want to see. So it's not actually about just achieving the outcome. It's also paying attention on how you achieve the outcome. So the effectiveness and the efficiency on traveling that journey and achieving everything that you said you'll achieve in that journey, based on the channel, on the platform that you have chosen. Because sometimes the channels that we choose, they limit us in terms of achieving the best of what you can do, because we have not thought about them. So the thinking around before you choose is important. That's what I was basing those discussions around. Yeah.
Let's simplify it this way. Can we come up with the components of a communication strategy? I'm a communication person. I don't know what to do, and I'm watching this conversation. Can you give me the components that we could make the strategy? The first one, I guess, is that, what did you call it, your end state, or the? Can we just talk about that? Can we list them, and then we can discuss them in one by one?
Okay. So that's in coaching. That's clarity of your goal. Where do you want to go? Where are we? Where do we want to go? Yes. So it's how we play to win, isn't it? How we play this game to achieve the goal. Yes. In the process, you must know, as Bodiwe put it correctly earlier, who are the stakeholders that I want to talk to? Because that will then determine the message and the platform. Who do I want to talk to with my message? So I want to talk to X, I want to talk to Y, and I've done my research. I know X, the best way to talk to them. I think Boniwe has already spoken about how to talk to engage stakeholders. So that determines the nature and the method you will use to engage that particular stakeholder. So that's key. Knowing where you want to go, who along the way are the stakeholders that are impacted by this.
Yeah.
I know, Boniwe, you may want to come in there.
So the second one is, who are the stakeholders?
It's one of the things that you have to look at, isn't it? In any study, to say, who am I talking to? I've been asked to go and talk. I know my goal, but in the process to achieve that, who are the people who are my stakeholders in there?
And they aren't always the same, right? Stakeholders aren't always the same depending on who the message is intended to be for. So let's say you work in a hospital setting and you need to communicate a message to customers about a new payment system. That's going to be a different set of stakeholders who help drive that message than the head of the nursing team, for instance. So I guess you would have to identify what the nature of the message is and what the intention is and who needs to hear it and how they need to hear it in order to determine who the stakeholders are. And I say that because sometimes based on influence, stakeholders are selected maybe at an executive level or a senior leader level because they have influence, and that's great. You do want to choose people who have influence to help carry a message if they can get high engagement around a message, but then sometimes they don't have the same expertise or connection within the right areas to make the message land on whom you need it to land with. So it seems like, it's important to really be intentional in identifying who the key stakeholders are and why they would be important to your communication message.
And in fact, a good communication person actually not only identifies the stakeholders, they live the life of the stakeholder. You must understand what they read,
right?
Where do they play? What do they eat? What are their habits? Because that's where you determine. So Sam, for instance, will put his material on LinkedIn. Why? Because he's identified the guy he wants to influence with his messages. He doesn't go and look for Drum magazine and talks there. No, he's got a specific, because he understands his end goal. And that influences the platforms, everything. Maybe Boniwe should take a lead on this one.
Just to bring you to fill Boniwe in, we agreed what we want to achieve with this communication strategy. We agreed that who we are talking to, And I think we agreed on, did you agree, Sydney mentioned we agreed on the platforms or the communication channels we are going to use. So I already have communication channels as number 3. And then we also agreed on the type of the message we are going to send, right? The messaging, right, George?
Well, yeah, the type of messaging is influenced by the type of stakeholder and all the things around the stakeholder, his culture, his beliefs, his values. Once you have drilled that and you fully understand, then you know how to communicate with them. But that it won't. The next stakeholder might be totally different, and so the message you send to him, whilst the objective is still the same, will be different.
Yeah, and I think probably to also add to George's point and to what Janae was also saying around the stakeholders and around the channels that one used to communicate. One important thing that is also quite linked to that, it's the stakeholder impact analysis. You need to do an impact analysis on your stakeholders and the message that you're putting right there, because like Janae was saying that stakeholders are different. The message will impact them differently, but you need to be, and others might be more impacted than the other. So having to do your stakeholder impact analysis also then helps in terms of narrowing your message, or like in terms of directing your message correctly and to the right people, because other people's impact is very minimal, so what you relate to them and what you tell them is in greater detail than those that have a higher impact in terms of the message or the message based on your strategy. So when you do your impact analysis, you will actually get to rank them, a rank status, whether it's green, it's red, or it's amber. So that actually then gets to give you an indication of where you need to focus your energy more, and where you actually need to work on maintenance more than anything else. And when you do that impact analysis with your rank status, one of the things that you need to put, if you're saying your status is red, why is it red? Why is it alarming? Because that is your priority. If it's amber, it's minimal. So it means that, why is it minimal? If you're saying it's green, then there isn't probably any impact. Why isn't there any? Then you actually then get to choose the right mechanism of relaying your messages and making sure that in your messages and in what you're putting forward and in your strategy, you get to cover all your stakeholders, but obviously you cover them with a different lens and with different needs that you're trying to relay. So your stakeholder impact analysis becomes very important, because you cannot paint everybody with the same brush, because they might all be your stakeholders, but the needs and the nature of the relationship differs from one stakeholder to the other.
Anyway, that's such a great point. Can I ask you, with this stakeholder impact analysis, do you use a certain kind of tool? Like in the first segment, you mentioned PRCN as an organization that has resources. Would you find an impactor stakeholder analysis through PRCN, or what's the name of one that you typically would use? Is there a name for it, or how? Like, is there somewhere where you can access one?
Yeah, so I'll have to revert to you on that one, Janae. I don't know, because I have been out of the profession for so long, so I'm not quite sure in terms of what is actually recent in the profession at the moment. But I'm sure if you can go to PRCN's website, you will be able to find something. But I'll just actually do my research and then maybe revert to you to actually give you a more detailed and a correct answer. But there are different types of methodologies that could be used, but I haven't been in the space for long, but I will actually investigate that and just get back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you. Just to direct to PRCN is great. Thank you for that.
Cool.
Just
Thank
to
you
bring Boniwe into the picture, we have a case study here. The CEO wants to launch a new SUV. We're trying to make sure that when the SUV is available and it hits the floor, there's a queue of people wanting to buy it. So just it. Now, I understand you say when we do the stakeholder impact analysis, among those stakeholders of this organization, which is the motor manufacturing company, we will choose the audience, because the next point here that I wanted us to look at was the identification of the audience. And I think that stakeholder impact analysis will also tell us that other stakeholders are not just critical. You know, I'm sure the car distributors will in any way absorb that car to put it on the floor. If you can convince them that the end users will be prepared to buy them. So I'm not going to waste time trying to convince my distribution network because my outlet. Can I make those assumptions in terms of audience selection? Or will I still have to also to consider them because maybe there are another companies talking to them in the meantime? I have no space on the floor at the end.
So I think, Sam, you also need to consider them as one, and I'll tell you why. So there's people that associate with the brand, no matter what, no matter the design of the car, no matter how beautiful, no matter the fuel consumption. There are people that are so married to the brand that whatever that you land, they will be receptive to it. They will like it, right? However, when you put out a new product out there, the intention is to ensure that the client base that you have that is married to the brand, you still retain it, and you rely on those people to be able to continue telling the good story about the brand, whether they love it because of reliability, maybe less fuel consumption, maybe it's affordability. There's different things, but again, you still need to attract new customers as well, so that people can actually buy your car or buy your brand. So you cannot also ignore those that you don't have in your stable as well, because remember, everything is all about attracting more customers or increasing your market share, and you can only do that by also attracting. So you also need to tap into those that you do not have as well. And if you put it out there and you know that dealerships will actually then take your car and then sell it, you still need to make sure that it also talks to those dealerships that you actually have current relationships with them, and what would be the correct way of them having to sell it for you, because it might not be a traditional way of selling it. They might actually need to actually tap into different avenues. So you can't ignore you can't ignore those stakeholders that you have that you don't have, because of the ones that you have. Because at the end of the day, it's also about profitability. So you even need to think of those people that you think do not like your brand and say, what do I need to do to attract them? What do I need to do to make sure that they actually take notice of my brand? What is it? And it's like sometimes having to steal, and this is having to steal customers. What is it? Why are they married to that brand so much that I don't have? And you need to tap into that to say, you know what, I need to improve. Either it's on my offering, whether it's my customer service, whether it's my packaging, whether it's how I show up, or whether it's how the communities that I operate in, or maybe the areas that I operate in, how I show up as a brand, as an employer. So you actually need to tap in all of those, even those that you don't have, because the aim is that you actually need to get more. Because if I have a car now, if I drive a car B, and car B brand produces another car next year, chances of me selling it are actually quite slim, because I already have a car. It's only 1 year, it's still new, I'm still enjoying it. So chances are you actually need people that are not having that brand or that car to also come onto your stable as well. So you need to actually cover everybody. You need to think of even the furthest of them all, even though that you know who your target market is. But within that target market, you need to actually identify new ones to come on your stable as well.
Great stuff. The next point we wanted to reflect on, what does understanding the culture mean? I don't know whether, George, you have that in your chapters of your strategy as a consideration. Is that speaking to the environment? Is that speaking to the industry? Are there certain norms you have to stick to that comes from our stick?
So if we go to the SUVs example, because that's the easiest.
Yeah.
So to recap, you have, let's take VW, the VW story. They had a big scandal, and everybody, they were sued and what have you. But today there's VW people who will buy VW irrespective of the noise that's going on out there, the Toyotas. Then there's a guy sitting on the fence who may or may not, depending on what you say to him. And then there's a guy who will never buy a VW because all he likes is motorbikes. You'll never buy a car anyway.
Yeah.
So now you've got. So this guy was a motorbike guy. Do you need to talk to him? The answer is no. You really don't. Let him know we are around. Let him know maybe he wants to buy his cousin the car. So having categorized that, now you're saying in this whole this group of people that we want to target, what are their habits? How do they talk? So if you want to sell the SUV, let's say you want to sell it in Soweto, what's the language that you would go to, your sales guy is using in Soweto to sell this? And this you wouldn't go and use exactly the same language that you would talk to a guy in another part. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at? Because culturally, there are things that they value. So if your message can somehow align with his beliefs, his values, etc., you have a higher chance of getting his attention. Because what you want is his attention. It's not really to convert him now by. You want his attention first. And then once you have his attention, you can then now say to him, you know what, it goes from 0 to 60 in so many seconds. And before he even hears about those 0 to something, you must get him curious to want to know what it is. So that is where understanding your stakeholder comes in. So what are the things how do you attract them? So that gets into a bit more detail. But so understanding the culture is important, because if you're marketing to right across to Nigeria, Mozambique, and there's language that you can't use in certain messages because of the destination of your message. And there's language you can use here. And the best campaigns are people who have really studied the markets they want to go to, and they've understood how the message should be packaged in that area. That is why global companies have struggled sometimes, because they will churn out a message in New York and send it right across and expect that the guy in Soweto and the guy in Mumbai interpret the thing exactly the same. No, that's not going to happen. So
is this going to be featured in your strategy?
I suppose that's more detail. In your strategy, you would have understand the culture. Isn't that what you say? Let's understand where the destinations we are going to. Then the detail of what all those are now part of detail, really, isn't it? In identity, your big strategy identifies the stakeholders and all that. I don't know, anyway, the amount of detail you would have at top level.
No, I think you've captured it quite well, George, because some of the details will not really be in your strategy itself or in your strategy document, but obviously you need to do the groundwork in terms of understanding. That will actually then inform how your strategy it's actually crafted. So you don't have to have those finer details, but you need to know them. You need to have them somewhere as a working document behind the actual document, so that you know what you reference into. So you actually need that, but it will not show up. But what you put there as your strategy, in terms of your purpose, in terms of your vision, in terms of how you get your results, and all of that will be informed by that level of detail that you would have gathered during that process.
Where is your communication strategy vis-a-vis the corporate strategy? Is it a subset, or is it how do you normally look at it?
So you would look at it interdependently. So you would actually have your actual corporate strategy or your business strategy. That's what you have. But your business strategy has sub-segments into it. And then communications becomes a leg, marketing becomes a leg, human resources becomes a leg, finance becomes a leg. But what they have as part of their sub-strategy then builds up to your ultimate corporate strategy. So you won't go showing all of these legs, but what you ultimately have, it has the sub legs under it, and each and every function will actually then have its own strategy that talks to the ultimate strategy that the business has to achieve.
Okay.
Remember in the interview that we had with Adisa, there was a little portion I asked about strategy. Let me just read quickly what part of their strategy was in 2020. They said, our customers are navigating change at an unprecedented pace, and we intend to inspire new possibilities for them by helping transform their infrastructure, expand applications and analytics, address their security needs, and empower their teams. So that's the big one. That's it. Now, your communication strategy sits under that. It must help the business to meet this. So it's framed for you. Now you must help to meet it.
Yeah, you're right, because if you look at if you listen to what you've just read right now, one of the things talks about having to empower, but what that empowerment entails, it's not written or clearly defined there. But there is a function, probably maybe from a human capital perspective or wherever, that actually deals with employee empowerment or probably customer empowerment, But that whatever that you're putting down needs to actually then address the empowerment component of that strategy. Hence, I say that you will have your ultimate business strategy, but underneath it, there are multiple functions that are there to support and to enable that, because it can't be enabled itself. You'll have those components that actually then get to enable that strategy, and it sits with different functions, and they've got different accountabilities to it, and they also have their own different plans, But ultimately, when you come out as an organization, this is the ultimate one that you come up with. You will not be singling out each and every functional strategy.
Great. Thank you. I think we can move to the next point. George, we are going into details now. Please just watch us that we don't dive too deep.
Yes. No. Although I wanted to make a good point around the communication function in the organization, will kind of must have a helicopter view of what everyone else is doing, so that you are then able to send out that communications around it. So you're helping production with messages. You're helping these technical people with messages. You're helping. So you necessarily must actually be able to see and say, wait, what is everyone else doing? And so that I'm able to communicate the whole piece to out there.
And to your point, George, that is important, because that communications layer needs to be able to connect the dots, right? It needs to connect the dots, because you can't look at one function's communication over the other. You need to actually be in a position where you're able to filter and you're able to separate different types of communication, and also making sure that there isn't a communication overlap, that there's this one that's happening and then this one clouds over this one, and people then end up forgetting the other one. So with that overall view that you would have in a communications, then you need to actually be able to structure that communication well, to say all the layers, they actually get the required communication platforms, their messages are equally distributed, right? But you need to be in a position of having to influence and direct in terms of the channel to be used to communicate, the timing of it to be communicated. You can't be communicating 3 different projects at the same time, because it means I will only look at that and I'll forget the other 2, and the other 2 will not get the same exposure or will not get the same attention as the other. So by having that holistic view, it puts you in a better position as a communications practitioner to say, this is what I think we need to direct. If we communicate this first, this will actually come second, and this will actually come third. And when this comes third, the other would have actually been building blocks, and people can actually make sense and follow in terms of what you're trying to build. Because sometimes people do make a mistake of having to communicate everything at any time, but there is no synergies, and there needs to be a synergies. There need to be synergies in your messages, and there needs to be they need to sync. So because you remember, it's only one organization and one strategy, right? So it mustn't look fragmented in the eyes of those that are outside the organization, and that talks to what George is talking about.
Okay, so I'm a graduate of PR and communication, and I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm wondering, I'm looking to get started in working in PR and communications, but these people are talking about very high level stuff. But the reality is that before we can talk about the strategy, there is a communications department. I want us to look into, when I enter into that department, what am I likely to do as a beginner in a communications department? Because I mean, that's how actually careers are developed. So this conversation that we have had cannot help somebody who wants to start a career in PR. It's going to scare them because they don't see anything that they've studied in their course that is there. That's why I like how George started. Let's talk about strategy in general, and then we'll come. So, but now, can we dive down to say, if you're going to make a career in PR and communication, you're arriving for the first time, what are the likely things that you will be doing to fill this profession? In other ways, those guys that the CEO doesn't even get to see. He only sees their product delivered through the head of the PR department.
And
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes, and then maybe I'll take that, and my colleagues could actually also give a step at it. I think like any other job and like any other entry-level job, the most important thing is for you as an individual to be curious and to be willing to learn. You must get into a work environment wearing a learning hat more than anything else, because what you learn in class and how you apply it in practice or in corporate are two different things. They are worlds apart. So first of all, you need to be curious. You need to want to learn more. And some of the things that you're going to be doing, which is sometimes where, as university students or graduates, they get a system shock when they get into corporate, because I studied public relations management. I'm going to get there and I'm going to be a public relations manager or a public relations practitioner. You're going to start at the rock bottom. You're going to start from scratch, right? You will do things that are very, other people can consider as probably being tedious. You will do admin. You will actually be doing like following up, sending invitations, following up on RSVPs, wrapping gifts, for example, packaging, wrapping gifts and writing name tags, having to go to one department to the other, having to drop off those newsletters, So when you're looking at it, you'll look at it as if like it's not meaningful. But those are the building blocks for someone that's in an entry-level position. You need to learn. You need to learn. You need to be curious. You need to be asking questions. That's another thing. It is important to ask questions. Why are we doing this? Why is it done like this? So that you are able to connect the practice and the practice and the theory. You're not going to get there in day one and they say, please put up a PR strategy together, or please put up a press release for us. Sometimes they will ask you to write stuff, and half of the stuff that you're going to write, they're not even going to use it. Or your stuff is going to be used, but they're not going to acknowledge it to you. Or it's going to be used, but it's going to be amended, And I think this is one thing that as an entry-level person into corporate, you need to make peace with, because that's how we learn, that's how we learn. And then the level of participation that you have and the learnings that you acquire, it actually then enables you then to move to next levels, into next steps, and get invited into meetings, into forums, and sometimes put your hand up. Oh, you're doing this. Can I do it? I think I know. You get it wrong, but someone will fix it and we'll move along, and then you actually get to take the learnings. So it's all about being curious and understanding that you will do the job that no one else wants to do. At a practitioner level or at a manager level or at an exco level, you'll do everything else that no one actually wants. It will be you going there to the printer and printing, posting letters, shredding documents, filing. All those things belong to you as an entry-level public relations or a communications person. But that's how we get to learn and get to move. So we must steer away from saying, I will get into that space and then I will hit the ground running as a PR manager, putting together strategies, putting together plans, because each and every organization, they've got their own methodologies, they've got their own procedures that you still need to familiarize yourself with. You still need to learn the language. You still need to learn the lay of the land. in a nutshell, it's about cementing yourself and understanding the lay of the land more than anything else.
So we are saying, Sister Bongi, we are saying don't get too excited. You are going to be sending invitations. I just want to simplify it. You are going to be sending invitations. You are going to be putting together attendance register. You are going to be welcoming people at the events. You are going to be carrying banners and putting banners together. I'm talking about the task side before we talk about the value side. You know what I mean? The importance side, because sometimes we mix the two. They make me carry banner, but that banner is important because it's a brand. And it must be carried, must be put there. You are going to be putting database of people. Yeah. You are going to be, so I want us to list it. And then some people take those things and they call them event management within that department. Speech writers or press releases. Yeah, that is probably, and I think the large number of people in the PR department are there. And then you have maybe 2 top people that really manage that troop. I've seen a very frustrated executive PR person. I said, what is wrong? He said, no, I had to fold my arms and I had to come and do things that cutting name tags and everything. I said, why? He says, because the rest of us is really that what they do. I'm just a head, but when is the event happening? Is the CEO is going to announce the results? I get down to doing the menial work.
I think that's such an important point. It's good to have this conversation about before the strategy to list the tasks and the operations part of the role. And it typically seems to, like Boniwe said, it seems to follow the assistant, and then something like a coordinator, and then something more like maybe it's a specialist or something like that, and then it goes into maybe a manager role. I think it's also important to highlight that you may cover stories like what you have behind you, Coach Sam, probably things like that being made and step and repeats being made and going to different events and making sure that all of those logistics are coordinated before. But also you mentioned something, Coach Sam, about you just said, whether or not there are specific people doing things. And Boniwe, maybe you want to talk a little bit about this too, but, I liken it almost to HR. You know how like in smaller HR companies, you may have a generalist that span most of the operations pieces of HR. I would think PR is something similar. And then for really big organizations, it's segmented out. You may have a compensation person in HR. You may have a benefits person, someone handling each component. I would suppose it's something similar with public relations, that you may find in larger companies that the roles may be more segmented, but in smaller companies, you may do more of a generalist kind of role where you're touching all aspects of it.
Yeah. On top of what Boniwe has said, all the small things like proofreading the newsletter. You are the one who comes in over the weekend to read, and then when the boss comes in on Monday, you are saying to him, yes, I've read it over again. Are there no spelling mistakes in there? That's when you start. And you also wrapping packets and gifts. But if I address the wrapping gifts part, when you become wiser, you realize that as you wrapped the gifts, they would have a name. This is the gift going to the Standard Bank CEO. His name is. Now, the curious person is listing all those names down. I've sent a gift to so the CEO of Standard Bank is so and so. So the FD because you're wrapping packets for gifts for them. Now, as you grow, now you're able to tell people that I know who the CEO of is. Now, as you grow in your role, now you're actually becoming the person who connects with those people. But you don't walk in from university and a list is given to you. No. Go through that because it helps you. And I said the same in my other life. We used to own hotels. And the best hotel managers were trained, but they would clean the floors, they would be in the laundry, they would do each part of the hotel.
Mhm.
By the time he is running the hotel as the general manager, you cannot put anything past him. You can't cheat him in the kitchen. You
Right.
can't, because he's understood it. And so if you go into a hotel and say, all I want is to be the GM here and run it, a wise organization would never employ you.
Right.
You're no good.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe, Brother Sam, on my side, what I can, the input that I can make is that as a new graduate coming in, based on the experience that we had, everyone else has been a graduate, and you come into the organization, is to actually understand what other people's roles are. Sometimes we are more focused on our role without understanding what value we can add in other people's roles. You know, and for that, it requires for us to build the relationships. Firstly, internally, you cannot be building a relationship outside when you are failing to build a relationship with your own, colleagues, and also you don't understand more about the organization. Sometimes you take it for granted that a lot of people know what the company is about. So, for me, what I can say to a person who is a graduate is to firstly understand the company, what it does, and also ensure that whatever work you do, you know how it fits into the overall corporate, corporate objectives of the organization. Whether you are a cleaner, whether you are, but you don't look yourself as a cleaner. You are facilitating a process to advance your company into a certain direction. You know, there's one say when they asked, I don't know whether it's the guy, a cleaner who was working for this company in which was actually taking the what is it into the space. They were taking something into the space. I don't remember what they were taking, but they asked this what you call employee was a cleaner. They said, "But what is your job?" He says, "My job is to ensure that I get these people into the space." He didn't define in terms of the work that she was doing, but she was looking at herself as part of the company, facilitating in the role that the person does. So the mindset for graduates, they must not see themselves as employers, but they see them as facilitators to advance that company. And you have to love what you do. Otherwise, you get so much frustrated. Thank you.
Great stuff. So,
Can I? Oh, I was
yeah,
gonna. May I?
Yeah.
Oh, there's also another component around tasks that that probably goes a little bit more to the analytics, probably with communications and public relations as well. And so oftentimes one may be tasked to put a message out in several different communication vehicles that may include social media, it may include email, internal newsletters that get sent home, etc. And now one may be tasked with trying to analyze what's the most effective way, and different messages will have more engagement, if you will. So I know that internally inside of an organization, if an email goes out to the entire employee population, for instance, if it's an internal position, and an internal message is sent out, one may be tasked to figure out how many people have opened it, to analyze if there was a specific action. Go and sign up for this course now because that's active. How many people have opened it and how many people have signed up for a course. So you may want to develop some sort of mechanism for recording the effectiveness of the messages and communication that has gone through and what has gotten the largest engagement. I'm sure we've all interfaced with a piece of we've all probably interfaced where we've signed up for something, and then at the end of it, once we've signed up, they'll say, "How did you hear about us?" And they'll want to know, is it by the website? Is it by, word of mouth, whatever. So metrics and analytics is probably a key part of some of the tasks and operations of these roles as well.
So in terms of tasks, there are many that you find within within the PRN communications department. So it's almost like groupings of them into one unit, because if there's no PR, probably they are lying somewhere. This task are lying somewhere in HR, or
Probably.
it doesn't mean that they are not being done. They're just being put, or maybe the CEO's secretary or the administration. You know that. So they ask
Or
them
marketing.
the task or marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's true. That's why everybody has that little disclaimer at the end of their job description that says all other duties as assigned. Everybody gets to get a little piece of everyone else's department when they need somebody to get it done.
Yeah. And
The
the
loopholes in the contract. Sorry, exactly. I was saying it's the loopholes in the contracts, Janae.
Yes, exactly. That's a loophole for everyone.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sure some of these professions, PR included, if you were to first expose people to it and then say, go and study it, they'll say, no, not me. When they see it at the task level. But we are all saying that it starts somewhere, and then you are comfortable when you are on the top side to put it together and to manage it.
And you're right, Sam. And you're right, Sam. I think it's like that for many professions, right? Obviously, we know that the entry-level jobs, they differ. You get through as a learner, like there's a learnership, there's an internship, there's a graduate programs, and all of those at themselves, they are actually at a different level. The level of exposure a graduate will get versus a learner, it's so vast, and it's somehow close to your middle management type of thing. So it differs depending on the level that you get in. But even if it's at that graduate level, every profession you actually have to start somewhere. You actually have to actually learn something that a textbook never taught you at school. So you can never step in and say, oh no, I know it all, I've learned it all, I've graduated cum laude and this is it. Believe you me, there is always a starting point, irrespective of what level that you get into, and there will always be those tasks that you think like, I never thought I'll do this, but you find yourself doing those. So I think it's like that across any professional, any profession at whatever level.
And it is because when you make mistakes at that level, they are not costly. The business doesn't lose money. If we put you at the top position right off and you make mistakes, those are expensive mistakes.
Right.
So, make them down there.
Yeah, great stuff. So we are left with the last part of today's LEKGOTLA. But before we take a break and then come for the last part, or second last part, I want us to check out of this conversation. I think it was aiding nicely to Boniwe's presentation. So we started putting glory to this profession, and then we end up with talking reality, which I think is helpful for someone who wants to make a career in PR. We don't want to send wrong messages that it's all beautiful. You come there and those things you work hard to get to where the profession takes you. So I think if we can just apply our mind and use the next 15 minutes or so, just to check out of it, what are we saying? What have you been saying? Like we did earlier on. Because we want this to be a nice package for somebody that is really listening, and even ourselves. I'm being reminded of so many things that I take for granted. Sometimes I find myself doing things that I could be using them for a learner to learn to enter the space, but I'm doing them myself, so I'm not even aware.
Yeah. So for me, I think go ahead, George.
Yeah. We just want to the confirmation.
Always ladies first. My mom taught me that.
No, I think from my side, I think there's been great learnings, and it has actually been kind of like a revision session. I haven't been in that space for very long, and to think that I studied public relations, but I only spent like almost a year and a bit in it. But I think today's conversation for me was actually quite eye-opening and just a reminder, in terms of what is out there, and a reminder to say that whatever that I have learned or I learned in the past, was not in vain. I use the learnings, and some of the learnings I use actually unaware. But today it's a reflection to say no learning is wasted for me. I think that's my takeout more than anything else. And I think for me, it's just the learnings and that I've also taken out of the session from everybody in this platform as well. I think the questions were very thought provoking. The sharing of experiences, our various understanding of different concepts, have actually been eye opening. So I actually probably take out of this or leave this segment of the session also enriched in my knowledge as well, and just to go back and just also refresh my understanding and also engage with the profession again. So thank you for that, colleagues. I think if it was not for you, I wouldn't be where I am sitting right now.
Beautiful. And thank you very much for your contribution. We really enjoyed it. But we are still here, so we're not going away yet.
Only a pleasure, Sam.
All right. So for me, it was that a plan or action designed to achieve a long-term and overall aim. That's your strategy. And in short, begin with the end in mind. And now this applies not only to corporates, to your life as well. Where do you want to end up? What do you want to do? And therefore, what are the things you will do to build up to what you want to do? So whilst we talk about companies, organizations, this applies to your life. Where do I want to be spiritually? Where do I want to be with my family? Where do I want to be with my finances? And then you begin with that end in mind and work backwards. Now I'm talking like a coach now, but it's so important. Yeah. And then I think the big takeaway for me at the end is the point we dwelt on in the last, that long-term success in life comes from an acceptance of humility on your way to the top. If you are not prepared to be humble, to be curious, to ask questions, to learn, then you are not getting to sit at the top. You might, but you won't be the ideal person. The ideal person is the curious person who's asked questions, who's able to be humble enough to learn from the cleaner and to learn from the CEO. Learn all that, and then you'll be not only good for your organization, but in your own life, you'll become a better person. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you, George. You will always be a coach. You can take off that hat.
Yeah, maybe for me, if I may come, Brother Sam, is that I think learning is progressive. And just for these discussions, we've actually learned a lot of key nuggets and things that one should consider, and especially when it comes to developing a strategy. It may, as Brother George is saying, for anything in our lives, whether it's personal or career or business, it doesn't matter. And one of the things that I take it as an aha moment that my sister Boniwe has said is that to work your way up, you need to do the job that no one else is prepared to do, and because sometimes we want the fleshy stuff, the fleshy work and the lifestyle. So it's about just contributing positively to the organization and making sure that you are making a difference. That's what, for me, it comes out. And also from the discussion point of view, it's like understanding who your customer is, understanding your market, understanding who you are in that space, in that environment, the climate, and understanding what is your role, what contribution are you making into this bigger purpose. And you cannot achieve it alone. You need to actually work with the people around you and ask the relevant questions, and you're going to be successful. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Sydney.
My reflections and checking out on this second portion have to do with how we spoke about the segmenting of the roles. I think it was really important to have some of what Bonnie Way and with George was talking about with formulating strategy at the top of the house positions and more senior lead positions, looking at what the strategy is, how you want to determine where you need to be, identifying stakeholders, doing a stakeholder analysis, finding organizations that will support you with resources that are related to communications and public relations is important and could be career enhancing. Whether you do it for a large organization or small organization, what the requirements of those roles will look like, how much more you take on, or how perhaps specialist in nature the roles will be. And if you are probably in entry level to mid-career, how you'll focus more on the operations and tasks, and that those are very meaningful. They're all career building. They will help you no matter where you land, whether this is within organization or you work for a small private organization or you have your own brand that you're representing, that you want to make sure that you do a great combination of all of these, and to pay attention to communication style. Building strong relationships was something that was really important that I heard, so that you can understand how to get information across to the right people and be networked with the right people to help you with your message and your branding. So I feel like there were a lot of great things that were shared that will help people understand what kind of capabilities or competencies they need to possess wherever they are in their different roles. And really early on, if I could just pull this back into the conversation from the first segment, Bonnie spoke about this and Michael also spoke about this. If you're studying in university and you are going through any courses, how relatable the courses can be in real time. You're learning the theory and then you're able to put it in practice almost right away. So it's so valuable if you could, really pay attention to what it is that you're learning and bringing into the organization. It makes your studies more rich. But I also think, and I wanted to add to that, it came up earlier in my mind, I wanted to add to that is, I think that leaders and clients also, I think they like to hear the richness of someone's perspective who's still in school. You are with other students, the material is fresh. If you bring in case studies or textbook information, if you're able to put it into some sort of practical means that could be utilized, I think that's also really important. So it's really reciprocal, that schooling of you getting real-time information and real-time practice with your theory, but also being able to bring in fresh new ideas and theory that you're learning about as well. So those were my takeaways from the session.
All right. Thank you so much, Janae.
Welcome.
Yeah. Mike, you have any input or any feedback? Sorry. You probably came across this topic in your studies, yeah?
Yes, definitely. I did come across it. But the key input that I would like to share with the new graduate is the only reliable way to go forward in terms of work environment is just have the right attitude. It's funny how somebody, let for instead, somebody who manages the yard or cleans the office knows more much than the CEO of the company, and you are not aware of it because they've been with the organization for around 30 years to 40 years. But because you're not aware, you never engage with those kind of people. They can even add some few ideas to you or know more clients than you because they open gate for them. They give them tea and all stuff. Therefore, the great attitude, and also don't hide behind the qualification that I'm an MBA graduate. I should just hide and not engage with people who are more junior level. Therefore, the right attitude should be able to provide you with a way of uplifting yourself in a career way.
Wow. I like that. Yeah. Beautiful stuff. Good observation, Mike. I think that's the best advice. Yeah. So energy. The whole universe is made of energy. So are we. We emit, I don't know the right way, we emit energy or transmit energy into the universe. And the same energy that we transmit into the universe get transmitted back to us. You know, I've heard somebody saying that what come to you, you invited it yourself. I was like, how can you say somebody that is struggling with life that they actually invited this struggle themselves? And how he explained it, he says, it's because people are not aware that actually, if you spend time fearful about things, or you spend time on things that are not good, they're gonna come to you. So you think you are, by talking about them and wishing them for somebody else, your system knows that you are wishing them for somebody else. The system doesn't know. They attract them to you.
Yeah. Can I have, with your permission, sir? With your permission, I want to read the little portion. It says, your attitude is going to determine where you go in life. It is the foundation of either failure or success. Your attitude is a composite of your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. Your thoughts, feelings, and actions are an energy that you send out into the universe. And whatever you send out into the universe is what's going to come back to you. I thought I would share that because it's so important.
Wow.
Yeah. That is a preview into our next segment. We're going to talk about energy centers. And I know there might be people who don't necessarily agree with the chakras. I mean, we can, if we like, we can put chakras aside and just talk about the statement that George has mentioned, that we are interconnected with the nature, with the universe, and with ourselves. So we might be the head of communication in a company, transmitting a lot of negative energy, and no wonder the company is forever in trouble. Or being a head of a department, harboring so much negative energy, and you are not able to take the company out of trouble because you are inviting so much negativity to the organization and you are not even aware of that. So that is going to be the topic. So I thought that as the people who carry messages in this space of communication, we need to be aware that we also transmit energy. And therefore, if the energy is not right, we actually might be transmitting poison, if I may use that. So that for me is quite fascinating, and we will talk about it. And then I don't want us to go into whether we agree on chakras or not. It is just one way of looking at the energy centers in your body. And in sports, we use different things to say, if your energy, you're positive, your attitude is right, you can win any game. But if you are fearful, before even you start the game, you actually can affect everybody around you. You say, hey, did you see that star of that opposite team? Hey, who's going to mark that guy? And then you make everybody become so fearful that actually the whole team just get paralyzed. The same happens in departments. When they give you tasks, they say you must finish in 1 week. You say, sure, guys, I don't know what this CEO has eaten, but we will try nevertheless. What have you just done? So that is the topic when we come back after 30 minutes. Yeah.
The Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he.
Aha.
Amen, my brother. Amen.
Yeah. So the mind is very powerful. Great. Is 30 minutes okay, or is it too long? What are you happy with 30 minutes? So we'll be, or should we just
is good. We must eat something now.
Yes. Should we be back at 2:30 or 2:45? What do you suggest?
Let's make it 2:30. 2:30 should be sufficient.
So
We
that
can
we
just
finish
say
early.
20 to 2:15.
Well, let's have a halfway and say 22 because I need to
Okay.
eat for.
Okay, great.
Okay.
To 2:45.
Will you be
So this
sending a
time
new link?
we are going to talk about your energy. There's nothing to read. We are just going to talk about these energy centers in our system. Are we carrying the right energy to communicate messages?
Did you say
Are you
quarter
sending a
quarter
new
two?
link?
Yeah, I just
Yes.
said 22, latest 2:45.
Okay.
Are you sending a new link, Sam?
I'm gonna send you the new link.
Okay. Okay. So we can
Great.
log off
Thank
this.
you. Yeah, you can log off
Okay.
this one.
Okay.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.